Space, the final frontier, is a vast and mysterious place that has fascinated us for centuries. But as much as we know, there are still many myths circulating about space. Let's take a look at some of the biggest lies we've been told about this topic. Firstly, we have the idea that space is just an untamed expanse where we've been swimming in space debris for decades, ranging from old satellites to rocket pieces. In fact, over 20,000 debris are currently orbiting the Earth, posing problems for future space missions. If you're planning to visit space in the near future, be mindful of where you go. You never know what kind of junk might be floating around.
Did you know that the sun isn't yellow? It's green, more or less.
Scientists gauge a star's temperature from the color spectrum it emits. Cooler stars appear red, while hotter ones appear blue. Our sun emits most of its energy with a wavelength close to green, but it also emits other wavelengths. All these colors blend together, and our eyes see a vibrant mix of white. However, from Earth, the sun appears yellow because our atmosphere is very good at filtering out blue light. If our star were truly yellow from Earth, we'd all freeze and be horrified. Additionally, the sun isn't actually on fire. It's a large sphere of gas composed mainly of hydrogen and helium and functions like a giant nuclear reactor, constantly fusing hydrogen atoms to create helium in the core. This process releases enormous amounts of energy, which is why the sun is so hot.
Speaking of flames, explosions in space can't happen.
I'm sorry, Star Wars fans, but a spacecraft can't explode in a violent blast because there's no air in space. Zero air means zero oxygen, and zero oxygen means zero fire. You might also think there are too many stars in the night sky to count, but you can actually do it. According to the Yale Bright Star Catalog, there are 9,110 stars visible from Earth. So, technically, you can count them, but I wouldn't be surprised if you lost track. And if you're worried about flying through an asteroid belt, don't be. Despite being made up of billions of space rocks ranging in size from tiny to 1/4 the size of the Moon, they are very far apart.
The asteroid belt between Mars and Jupiter is 225 million kilometers wide, roughly half the distance between Earth and the Sun. The distance between space rocks is thousands of kilometers. You'd instantly freeze in space without a suit.
Well, not quite. You wouldn't immediately turn into a popsicle. It would take a bit more time because heat and cold don't move very quickly in the vacuum of space, but unfortunately for you, there's a problem. You won't be able to breathe. After just 15 seconds, your brain won't receive enough oxygen from your blood, and you'll pass out, and then, after just 2 minutes, it's game over for the rest of your organs. In short, if you find yourself playing astronaut without a spacesuit, it's game over.
Did you know that space has no temperature?
That's because temperature is defined by the speed at which particles move and the amount of energy they possess. In the vacuum of space, there are no moving particles, making space devoid of temperature. Of course, some parts of space are really hot, like those around stars, but the farther you go, the more particles disperse, making space colder.
Our planet isn't flat, but it's not a perfect sphere either.
It bulges at the equator due to its crazy rotation, and because of this bulge, launching spacecraft from the equator is much easier than from the poles. You might think that in space, no one can hear you scream, but that's not entirely accurate.
The fact is, sound needs something to travel through, like air or water.
In space, things are super spread out, so all those epic space battles and galactic explosions in movies would be completely silent. However, there are places in space with enough particles for sound to travel through. For example, you can hear the black hole at the center of the Perseus galaxy cluster. Another myth is about zero gravity. It's not real. There's still gravity around the International Space Station, about 90% of that on Earth. Astronauts can float because they're essentially falling around the planet.
Let's be realistic. Hollywood's version of space travel isn't credible. Sure, orbits exist, but at different altitudes,
they involve different speeds. So transitioning from one orbit to another isn't a walk in the park. You can't just push yourself in the right direction and hope for the best. Orbital velocities need to be taken into account. This reminds me of the 2013 movie Gravity and how Sandra Bullock tried to survive in space. Hollywood has certainly fueled these myths, but who can blame them? In 1976, NASA's Viking 1 spacecraft captured a photo of a curious rock formation on Mars, which suspiciously resembled a face. Some people claimed it was evidence of extraterrestrial life on the red planet, but according to the space agency, the face was nothing more than a pile of rocks arranged in such a way that the shadows created an illusion of facial features. It turned out to be nothing more than a rather photogenic hill. The solar system isn't stationary. It's in motion, traveling through space at a speed of 225 kilometers per second, which means it's scooting through the cosmos faster than a cheetah chasing its prey. It takes 230 million years for the solar system to complete one orbit around the Milky Way. Without the sun, planets would be quite chilly, with temperatures dropping as low as -270 degrees Celsius. But with the sun nearby, planets can enjoy much more livable temperatures. Of course, not all planets are equal. Mercury, for example, is the closest to the sun. Venus, on the other hand, is farther away but somehow hotter than Mercury. Distance from the sun isn't the only factor influencing a planet's temperature. Other things like its size and reflectivity come into play. So saying that Mercury is the hottest planet in our solar system is a lie.
No? It's not hotter just because it's closest to the sun.
Even though we've been deceived in some ways, it doesn't make space any less awe-inspiring. It's still a vast, beautiful, and utterly fascinating part of our universe, and there's still much to discover. Who knows, maybe one day we'll truly find little green beings out there, or perhaps we'll uncover something even more incredible.
So, we should keep dreaming and exploring. These are some of the false myths.
Do you have any other space myths to debunk? Write them in the comments, and remember to subscribe to the channel.